Good evening. My name is Carrie Harlow, and I work with VSAC's Career and Education Outreach Program. Tonight, we're live on Facebook to do a Fafsa. So before we get started, I just wanted to say a couple of things about the Fafsa. For those of you who are curious, high school seniors should be filing a Fafsa in order to access federal and state financial aid for college. But the Fafsa can also be used for technical schools. So in addition to colleges and universities, students can use the Fafsa to go to schools such as Advanced Welding Institute or Aveda Cosmetology School. Any of these institutions also use the Fafsa. At events across the state, parents sometimes come up to me and ask, why should I file a Fafsa? I don't think we're going to get anything. And the answer I can give them has 4 points. One is, if you want your student, or students if you want to have a student loan for college, you have to file a Fafsa for that. Second, many colleges and universities require that students file Fafsas in order to access all possible aid. And before a college gives out their merit or need-based aid, they want the student to exhaust all other options. Third, this is a special circumstance. The Fafsa is a just the facts document, and it asks for financial information from the student and the parents. Sometimes there are special circumstances, and without a Fafsa filed, it's very hard to have conversations with college financial aid offices about those special circumstances. It's also, you could maybe think of it as an insurance policy, because if something were to happen during the course of the school year when the student is in college, the parents have the Fafsa filed, and when that special circumstance happens, oh, your roof blows off in a storm, somebody's hours are cut at work, you can get right in touch with the financial aid office and you don't have to start with filing the Fafsa. That's already been done. And finally, the 4th reason why families should file a Fafsa, even if they think they might not be eligible, is scholarship money. Here in Vermont, we have scholarships available for students filing the Fafsa, high school seniors, who file a Fafsa and commit to one of 7 Vermont institutions, can qualify for a $1,000 scholarship. Right now on that list, we have the Vermont State College System, so Castleton Community College of Vermont, Northern Vermont University, Vermont Technical College, University of Vermont has also signed on to this, Sterling College, Norwich University, and Springfield College, which is located in St. Johnsbury, or their online school, have all signed on and said if a high school senior from Vermont files a Fafsa and commits to come to their school, they have an extra $1,000 scholarship that one student will win at each of those institutions. Additionally, the College Board has a scholarship program, and if you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can go to the College Board website and check out the Opportunity Scholarships. But students complete a number of different steps, and each step has a scholarship associated with it. Filing a Fafsa, a student can qualify for one of the College Board Opportunity Scholarships, and they are giving out 200 in October, 200 in November, 200 in December, and 100 each in January and February. Usually, national scholarships, there's not much of a chance to win, but 800 scholarships, there's some pretty good odds there. So those would be the 4 reasons why students and their parents should file a Fafsa as a high school senior, even if they think they might not qualify for financial aid. Tonight, we're on the Fafsa website, but we'll be working in a test environment, so there'll be some things that you can do that maybe we can't do. But this is our chance to be able to move question by question through the Fafsa with you in an environment that doesn't give up any real person's information. In the test environment, these are all fictional people. So when you're on the Fafsa website, you can get there by going to fafsa.gov. We're going to start here. If you have not started a Fafsa before, that's where you're going to go. So we'll start here. And now we're going to move to the test environment. But this page will look the same to you when you start here. And for tonight, we're going to assume that the parent is filing the Fafsa with the student there. So we're going to sign on by saying, I'm the parent. And let's try Harvey first. And the student's last name is last name. And then we have a social security number. There is an option, as you can see at the bottom of the page, where you can click and show the Social Security number so that you're making certain you're getting the right number in. And you can see that right there. Sabina, can you just hit that again to turn that off? Thank you. And then we'll have the student's date of birth in there. Harvey was born April 19th, 2001. And we hit next. All along the way, there are opportunities for federal student aid to let you know that this is a document to apply for financial aid, and that's the only purpose for using this document. And so they talk about this and say not to use this for an unauthorized reason. We accept the terms, and we move on. So you can see right now that we're signed in for Harvey, and current application status is not submitted. We're going to hit continue. Oh goodness. And for save key, that is basically a password that you're just going to use tonight to get back into the system. And so go ahead and type save key. And we're going to hit next. So this means that Harvey is being used. And so we are going to go back. Can you don't save that password, please? Up there, thank you. And we're gonna log out real quick. You can stay where you are. Don't worry about a thing. We're gonna scroll down to the bottom of this page. Woo! And we're gonna get back into our test environment. This is the beauty of Facebook Live. Stuff will happen, right? Mm-hmm. We're the parent, and we're going to have Larry. Harvey's brother Larry is going to apply for financial aid. I'm sorry?
I was just using Larry. Is that going to be a problem? But I was using it on this computer.
Did you create a save key?
Yes.
You did. Okay. So we're not going to do Larry. We're actually going to go back and use Larry's brother, John. That's okay, and we'll start over again. It's a good thing we have a lot of brothers. All right, and do you want to show that Social Security number? Oh, go ahead and close that. That's the virtual keyboard. And his date of birth is also 4/19/2001. We'll hit next. We accept the terms. Oh, this is not good news. And it looks like John might have an account too. Go ahead and try save key. Nope. Okay.
Use the save key made for Larry, or is it?
Oh yeah, we could use the save key. Let's go back to my Fafsa. And don't save the password. We can do this. Home. All right. We'll start one more time. And we can get into Larry's account, I hear. And these things will happen.
Larry?
Larry. One of the options while you are working on this is if the student is in the room, you could actually have the student log in with their FSA ID. That's another option. So we've been going in as the parent, but the student could also log in. And again, we will accept those terms. We're going to continue. Can you remind me of?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Great. And we'll hit next. The next thing that Federal Student Aid is really good at is they are very good at answering questions for families. And there are a number of places in this process where you can get questions answered as you're filling out the FAFSA. But at the very beginning, they answer questions like, how can I get help? Well, you can get help tonight. But also, you can click on the help icons, which are those question marks. They also say, how long will it take to complete? And they say it should take less than an hour if you have the information available. You can save your FAFSA if you can't finish it and use that save key that you just created to go back in at a later time. So maybe you need to recheck something or you don't have your tax returns on you. That would be a way that you could do this. The save key gets you back into that FAFSA until such a time as you hit submit. And the FAFSA will live there for 45 days unfinished. On day 46, if nothing's been done with that FAFSA, it will go away. So let's hit next. And there are a couple of places on here where you get prompts to let you know we're really talking about the student, not necessarily the parent. And you can see it up here where it says personal information for the student, and you also have the banner over there that says student information. So we're going to get started, and Larry's middle initial is D. Hit next. And we're going to put in Larry's email address. It's important for students in this process to use an email address that isn't their school email address. Remember that students will be applying for financial aid for more than 1 year, most likely, maybe 2 or maybe 4 or maybe beyond that. And so it's important to have an email address that will continue to exist after the student graduates from high school. So that's one of the reasons why we recommend that students use a free email address like Gmail or Yahoo or something like that. Federal Student Aid will also communicate with students based on this email address. So returning students this year just got an email from Federal Student Aid that reminds them they need to get online and file their FAFSA for their next year of college. We got a telephone number. Let's do 802-111-2222. So the permanent mailing address, Larry lives in Burlington. And if I can tell you a secret when you're filling out this FAFSA, whenever you get to state, if you select it and type the letter V, it'll take you right where you need to go. And we will hit next. Great. The next question, have you lived in Vermont for the last 5 years? And Larry has. And he is a U.S. citizen. So there's a drop-down menu here, and he confirms that he's a U.S. citizen. This page often stops people in their tracks when I'm doing a forms night with families. And the reason why is because it reloads the page, but reminds students that if they've lived in Vermont for at least 5 years, they most definitely are eligible to transfer their FAFSA information to the Vermont State grant program. And so there is a link at the end of the FAFSA with which students can do that. And we'll hit next. So the high school completion status of the student when they begin college is that they will have a high school diploma. And the student, in this case, Larry will be working on his first bachelor's degree. So even if a student has a plan of going to medical school or they have a plan of getting a graduate degree, we want to answer that question as the student will be in the coming year. And that in that case, Larry's working on his first bachelor's. Because he's working on his first bachelor's, he won't have one by the time he begins school. And his college grade level will be never attended college first year. The next question they ask is the student interested in receiving work study? And so what I recommend to students is say yes to everything. You can always say no at a later date if you find you don't have time to do that or you're not interested in doing work study. Work study is a program that students can do on their college campus where they work a job and they receive a paycheck. A lot of times students will use that money to pay for personal expenses they have while they're at school, such as doing laundry or getting pizza or putting gas in their car. So Larry is a male, and we're going to answer that question. And it mentions that most male citizens and male immigrants must register with the Selective Service System in order to receive federal financial aid. So Larry is 18 years old. He was born 4/19/2001. And so in this case, Larry has not registered even though he is 18, so we'll click no. But what's great is the FAFSA will offer the opportunity to register the student. And what they can do is, do you want us to register you? Larry can say yes. And we'll hit next. The next question about the student's driver's license number and state is an optional question. So parents, if you don't have the student's driver's license number on you right now, that's perfectly fine. We can skip this information and move on to the next question. The next question asks if the student was a foster youth or was ever in the foster care system. In Larry's case, he was not. And then it asks highest school completed by parent one. And this is one of those situations where you can click on the question mark and it can give you more information. And so what this says is select the answer that best describes your parent's highest level of education. This question a lot of times is used for state scholarship information or maybe for college scholarship information. It is not used by federal student aid and whether or not a student would be eligible for federal Pell Grant. But for this question, parent means your birth or adoptive parent. Do not answer the question about step parents, legal guardians, or foster parents. So that gives clarification about that question. Can we tell them they were helpful? Thank you. All right. And now we're going to have to function F11 to get back to the page. And we are back there. Thank you. So the highest school completed by parent one is high school. Highest school completed by parent two, we can click on that, is unknown, not certain. Parent number two isn't available right now, and so we don't know the answer to that. So we can say, I don't know is a very valid answer. We can go ahead and hit next. And again, they're reminding us because the FAFSA belongs to the student, when we are saying you, we mean the student. And the banner still says student information. But now the FAFSA is asking about the student's high school that they graduated from. This is a little bit of a tricky screen, because a student can enter in almost anything and hit next, and the FAFSA will let you move forward. But it's important. One of the contests we're doing here at VSAC is if a high school can get 70% of their senior class to file their FAFSA, they could be put in for a drawing for a $1,000 senior class gift. So we want to make sure that the right school gets the credit. So in this case, Larry goes to Burlington High School. And what I would recommend doing is using the least amount that you need in order to search Burlington. So we can say Burlington for the name of high school. And then choose our state, which is Vermont. And remember that trick. Type V. Great. And if you have a school with a longer name, for instance, Mount Abraham or BFA St. Albans, I might search on something much smaller than that. So BFA St. Albans, I would just search on Albans. Or Mount Abraham, we don't know if it's MOUNT or MT period or MT. So if we just search Abraham, then that would be able to pull up that school. So we're going to hit search. And we find Burlington High School. But you'll notice that there's 2. So when we see that, what we'd always like to do is select the first one. And you can see that now we have Burlington High School coming up officially in there. And we're going to hit next. And so this is Larry, based on the information you've provided. It looks like you'd be eligible for federal student aid. And now we're going to continue through the application to determine how much he can receive. The first thing to do is to add colleges. The FAFSA asks if you know the college's federal school code. Please know you don't have to know that 6-digit code. You can search for these colleges, and you can search in some pretty easy ways. So for instance, Larry has a bunch of colleges that he's applying to in Vermont. So what we're going to do is under state, we're going to type V and select Vermont. And we're just going to do search based on Vermont. And there's a number of schools on here, and we can scroll through. Larry is going to apply to Advanced Welding Institute, so let's check them off. Larry's going to apply to Castleton. Looks like they haven't gotten up to date on the name change. That's okay. Larry's also applying to Champlain and Community College of Vermont. It's okay, and you just click on those boxes. We can scroll here, and Larry's also applying to Northern Vermont University. Great. And we're going to, those are the schools in Vermont, but we have a couple more schools just over the border that we're going to choose. And so if we could choose New York, and sometimes when you get to N, you still have to scroll down a little bit. There we go. And the city is Plattsburgh. There's a couple of schools in Plattsburgh that are not too far away. And we're going to search. And there is Clinton Community College and SUNY College at Plattsburgh. So we can choose those as well. That's our list of schools. There's room for up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA. And students can put down right up to 10 colleges. And then they will select their housing plans. So can we select on campus? Actually, Advanced Welding Institute will be with parent. Sorry, Castleton will be on campus. Champlain will be with parent. Community College of Vermont will be with parent, so you can select different things. Northern Vermont on campus. Clinton on campus. SUNY of Plattsburgh on campus. Great. And we're going to hit next. Now, the application just told us that they saved, but at any point during this process, or often, you can hit that save button right up here to make sure that the information that you have has been saved up till that point. Now, again, we are still talking about the student here and here. So what is the student's marital status as of today? Larry is single. We'll hit next. And now come the questions that determine whether or not Larry's going to need to use parental information on his FAFSA. So the first question is, do you now, or will you have children who receive more than half their support from you during the upcoming school year? He doesn't. That will be a no. Do you have dependents other than your children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of your support? That will also be no. And then these other questions that determine dependency status on the FAFSA. Are you currently serving active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a veteran? At any time since you turned 13, were your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a dependent or ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? And does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you? This is not custody. This is legal guardianship. And someone other than parent or step-parent as determined by a court in your state of legal residence. And the last option is none of the above. And in Larry's case, it is none of the above. The next question, also about dependency status for the student, is on or after July 1st, 2019, were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? And this was not the case for Larry, so he has a no answer there. When we answer that, based on the answers, that means that Larry is considered a dependent student as part of the financial aid process and needs parental information to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA gives Larry the option of continuing to report parental information or not able to provide information about parents. What I should tell you is that one of the things that makes a student independent is not whether or not the parents will provide their information or whether or not the parents will pay for college. Unfortunately, to determine financial aid, the student still needs parental information in this case, unless there's a special circumstance, and then they would get in touch with the college financial aid office to talk that through with them. So for tonight, Larry will provide information about his parents, but if Larry was in a situation where he could not provide parental information and needed to make an appeal with the financial aid office, he would say that he was unable to do so. So now we're switching, and you'll notice that it talks about parent marital status and it talks about parents, so that banner has changed. The marital status of parent is one of the big questions that we get when we're doing managing college cost presentations as well as financial aid forms nights. So let me just talk about that a little bit. The help under this talks about the parent's marital status as of the day that the student submits the FAFSA. And what we're talking about here is if the parents, the legal or biological parents, live together, it is both parents' information on the FAFSA, regardless of marital status. If the biological or legal parents of the student are separated or divorced, then the parent that the student lived with the most in the last year is the parent who will be on the FAFSA. If that parent has remarried, it's parent and step-parent information. Now, sometimes I'll have families say to me, hey, we can actually go back to the question. Sometimes parents will say to me, hey, we have 50-50 custody. The time is split equally. If you were to call federal student aid with that question, a lot of times the answer they would give you is there are 365 days in the year, and so somebody had an extra day. But parents will then push back and say, no, we split that day. It was 12 hours, 12 hours. And in that case, it will be the parent that provided more financial support for the student. And the way that you would look at that is you would think of things like who provided the student with health insurance, or maybe who provided the student with transportation, or who was helping pay for their car insurance or their cell phone. We'd look to those things to determine who that would be. But if that parent has remarried, it will be the parent and the step-parent. And so in Larry's case, his parent is married or remarried. And when did your parents get married or remarried? It was January of 2010. All right. And now they say, enter the information about your first parent. And so we've got that information. Can you enter that? Pardon?
Is it going to be Calvin or Susan?
Susan.
Okay.
So we're going to start with parent number 1. And so parent's last name is last name. Parent's first initials S. And the date of birth. Okay, and the parent's email address. Good. And then we're going to re-enter that parent's email address. While we've got somebody typing, I just want to point out that as we are moving through this, you'll notice that there are green check marks. And as we move through the application, you can see how far that you've gotten. And so we are at the midpoint of the application, but actually I'd say we're probably a bit further along. And what I can tell you is next year when the student files their FAFSA, they will have a renewal application, and a lot of this information will already be data entered. So the student will just have to update income and asset information, and that will be a lot easier. Great, we're going to hit next. And so let's enter information for the other parent. We do have to put both of those parents down. So it is the parent and the step parent who are being listed on here. And we'll hit next. And have the parents lived in Vermont for the last 5 years? Well, they have, yes. We'll hit next. So on household size, it counts up. It says, hey, we know there are 2 parents and we know there's the student and then the parent's other children. So in this household, there are 2 other children. And then other people, if they live with your parents and your parents provide more than half their support, and your parents will continue to provide more than half their support when the student is in college. So we're going to have 0 here. There's no one else. And then the number in college. Larry actually has a brother, Harvey, who's going to college, so we're going to have 2 in college this year. We'll hit next. And so at this point, they're asking for information from the parents' 2018 tax return. And so most people have already completed their 2018 tax return at this point. Some folks may have had an extension, but a lot of times the extensions are up and due by October 15th. So already completed. And the tax return the parents filed is a 1040. And the parents' tax filing status is married filing joint. And this information can be found on the tax return. So if you have any doubts, just look at that. Now, there is an IRS data retrieval tool. We're working in the test environment tonight, and so we're not going to be able to use that, but I want to take you on a couple of steps through it so you can see. They will ask for one of the parents' FSA ID. And so parent 1 has an FSA ID, Sabina. Actually, you know what? We don't need to do that because we can, as you see here, skip what's called the IRS DRT. That's IRS data retrieval. But if you can do that, that is the best way to bring your information into the FAFSA. Nothing says official to college financial aid offices like having the IRS say, this is the tax information that we transferred. So that's the best way to do things. But if for some reason you're not able to do it, like we're in the test environment and we can't, we can actually put in the information. And so this family's adjusted gross income for 2018 was $75,000. And you will notice we didn't have to type in the comma, it came in automatically, and we do not put in cents. There's an income estimator on here that you would use if by chance you hadn't filed taxes yet. However, most people have at this point. And so then they will ask the wages or the earnings of each parent. So that is sometimes confusing when I'm at a forms night. We get the adjusted gross income, which is the total of all income, but then they would like to know the wages. And part of the reason why is because they want to give an allowance for things that are withheld from your wages, such as Social Security and Medicare. So parent 1 has earnings of $35,000. And parent 2 has earnings of $35,000. The amount of parents' income tax is $6,200. And that comes from very specific lines on the tax form. So it would either be transferred in from the IRS if you did the IRS data retrieval, or you will look for line 1040, line 13, minus Schedule 2, line 46. And if you don't file a Schedule 2, then it would just be line 13 on the 1040. And then it asks if parents have any of the following items in 2018. And so combat pay or special combat pay, student college and grant scholarship aid that had to be reported to the IRS, that's usually if it's over and above the cost of the institution. Education credits, which some families may qualify for when they have a college student in the house. Untaxed portion of IRS distributions. IRS deductions and payments to self-employed SEP, KEO plans, that's actually a line from the 1040. And tax-exempt interest income. In this case, Larry's family has none of those things. This would be child support paid due to divorce or separation, and no one in Larry's house is paying out child support. Again, remember, we're talking about parents' financial information. Earnings from a cooperative education program offered by a college, they don't have that. And taxable earnings from need-based programs like work study. So Larry's parents have none of those things. Child support received for all children. Housing, food, or other living allowances. I just wanted to notice that this is child support received. So the question on the other page was child support paid. This one is child support received. Housing, food, and other living allowances paid to members of the military or clergy, but don't include the value of on-base military housing or the value of the basic military allowance for housing. Payments to a tax-deferred pension and retirement plan, that sometimes is found on the W-2, codes 12, boxes 12A through 12D, and they have very particular codes. So you want to make sure not to report codes that are not included on here. The ones included are D, E, F, G, H, and S. Do not include C. So on this one, let's put in 2,500, please. Oh, that's 25,000. So we always want to check our numbers when we're entering information because 10 makes things look very, very different. Veteran non-education benefits like disability, death pension, or dependency and indemnity compensation. And then other income not reported like workers' compensation or disability payments. And none of those apply for Larry, so we're moving on through. And you know what? We've entered a lot of financial information. Time to save. No, really, time to save. Thank you. I mean it. Now they're asking about parents' asset information. So the current balance of cash savings and checking for Larry's parents is $10,000. And this is another place where we get a lot of questions on the FAFSA about parents' assets. They ask about parents' investments, but they do not want included retirement plans, anything in a qualified retirement plan, and they do not want included in that investment the parent's primary home. So if we're reporting under this asset, it might be things like a second property or a camp or a rental, or it also could be something such as a Vermont higher education investment plan. So this family actually has some money in that, and they have about $30,000 saved. And that asset, even though the student is the beneficiary of that account, it's reported as a parent asset, and as a result, it's protected more in the financial aid calculation than a student asset would be. So it's a good thing that it's on here as opposed to in the student's assets. And then as of today, what's the net worth of your parents' current businesses and or investment farms? So we do not include a family farm or a family business with less than 100 employees. We want to make certain that the small family farm and the small family business does not get reported on here. And in Larry's case, this is also a 0. Great. And now you'll notice that we're switching again to student information. So we were doing information about the student, then we did the parent financials, now we're back to the student financials. And we want to be aware of that because sometimes when people are filling out a FAFSA, they mistakenly keep filling out parental information, and so we're switching here to the student. And so For 2018, it asks if Larry has filed a tax return, and Larry's a senior in high school, and he's actually not going to file. He did not make enough last year to file a tax form. But they would offer him the option of using the data retrieval tool, but based on his responses, they're not even going to offer him the option because he didn't file a tax return. If he had filed, he could use the IRS data retrieval. And so Larry earned about $4,500. Larry earned $4,000 last year. I think that's under the amount. And we're going to hit next. And this is, does he have any of the following? So Larry did not pay child support. He does not have earnings from a cooperative education program. He doesn't have taxable earnings from a need-based employment program like work study, but at some point in his college education, he might. So that might be something that gets filled out later on if he ends up doing work study at his college. He doesn't receive child support. He doesn't have any of these other things. He doesn't make payments to a tax-deferred pension plan. He doesn't have workers' compensation. And so all of these are zeros, and we're going to hit next. And as of today, Larry has about $200 in his checking account. Larry has no investments. He'll get there someday. He's just not there right now. And he also does not have a business or investment farm. So that would be a zero as well. And when a student doesn't have these things, or when parents don't have these things, it's very important to put a zero in there, because that way it's known that it was looked at and the answer is zero. A blank is not necessarily a zero in this process. So we want to have this completely filled out. Oh. Following error occurred. So they're saying, hey, the parents' incomes are identical. Is that really a thing? It might be, but the FAFSA has a check system in it, and I kind of wanted it to do this because it's not necessarily wrong. So in this case, it's okay. Both parents did earn $35,000 a year, and we can say, yep, we're okay with this. Let's check for errors. And they didn't find any. So the next question on here is, are you a preparer? A preparer is a person who's been hired by the family to fill out the FAFSA for them. So if you hired someone, that would be a preparer. But in this case, Larry's parents are filling this out tonight, with Larry over their shoulder, of course. And so we're going to say no, they are not preparers, and we'll hit next. And then you will get a summary. And what's great is you get a summary, if you want to scroll, of all the information that was reported, all the questions that were asked, all the information reported, and you can kind of look it over and say, yep, that looks right. Burlington Senior High School is the school. These are the colleges. And remember, after you hit submit, if another college comes on the scene, students can log into their FAFSA and add colleges anytime they want to after the FAFSA has processed. If it ends up being more than 10, then the student would go on and take some of the schools off in order to add new colleges or universities. And so we've got all this information here. We're going to scroll right onto the bottom. We like it. You have the option to print this should you choose, but what I can tell you is after the FAFSA processes, the student will have a student aid report that will also have all this information in it. And so some families will decide, you know what, we don't need to print this out tonight because we're going to get the student aid report afterward. So we're going to hit next. And so both the student and one parent need to sign the FAFSA. In order to do that, you would think it would be a signature, but it's not. This is what we use the FSA ID for. And the first thing you have to read are the terms and conditions. And you have to say, by signing this, you certify that you will use your federal student aid to pay for the cost of college. You are not in default on a federal loan. You don't owe money back on any overpaid grants. You will notify your college if you default on a student loan, and you will not receive a Pell Grant from more than one college for the same time period. You are not allowed to do that. And then by signing this, you also say that this is all true to the best of your knowledge, and you agree to verify the information. So the parents might be asked for a copy of their tax return if they didn't use the data retrieval. They might be asked to verify who the people in the household are and who the college students are in their household for the coming year. That information could be verified, and by signing, you agree to supply that information if you're asked for it. We're going to agree to the terms. Oh, and P.S., they have this nice little thing at the end. If you purposefully give false or misleading information, you may be fined up to $20,000, sent to prison, or both. But don't let that bother you. And in all seriousness, what I have seen with people filling out the FAFSA in my time working with families is that people make honest mistakes, and that's really okay. We're only human, right? But to falsely give information is something totally different. So we're going to hit next. And we're asking for the student's FSA ID, so Larry's FSA ID. And what's great is, I don't know if you can see this well or not on the screen, but the student, if they have verified their information, they can use their username that they created, or they can use their email address, or they can use their mobile phone number. So there's a username. Yep, there's a username and a password. And it's really important to keep this information written down somewhere or saved somewhere because, again, being only human, sometimes people forget.
So the FSA ID is new user 57.
He is new user 57. And his password, first year with a capital F.
There we go. Thank you.
Great. Sign this FAFSA. Great. And now we're going to provide parent signature. And actually, parent 1 is going to sign this. And again, we agree to the same terms and conditions. So we read them the first time. The family remembers very vividly what they agreed to. And we're going to hit next. And we've got that FSA ID username. Or you can use the email address or the mobile phone number. And then the FSA ID password. And I should mention that there are prompts all over the place. If you forgot your username, there's a prompt for that, and they can send you an email or a text to remind you. If you forgot your password, there's a prompt for that as well. So you're not out there dangling. There's opportunities along the way to be able to retrieve this information. So we're going to sign. And we'll notice that both are signed electronically, and we're ready to submit. And when we submit, congratulations, Larry. We filed the FAFSA and it was successfully submitted to Federal Student Aid. Now, it will take a day or two for that FAFSA to process, and Larry will get an email that says that the FAFSA has processed when that happens. And as a matter of fact, one of the parents who signed the FAFSA with their email address and their FSA ID will also get a notification that the FAFSA has processed. What happens next? They're going to get an email version of this page. They'll find out their FAFSA was processed. The information on the FAFSA will go to each of the schools that were listed, not the high school, but it will go to each of the colleges and the trade school that was listed on here. And colleges will then use that to determine financial aid once the student has been accepted at those institutions. And if you have questions about federal aid eligibility, it's important to contact the college financial aid office. And so we can print this page, but when we scroll down, because we were in the test environment, when you finish your FAFSA, you get something called an expected family contribution. Because this is the test environment, it doesn't have a real EFC, but families can figure out what that number is right on this page. And it usually starts with zeros. And so if it said 0, 0, 5, 6, 7, 8, that would mean the EFC was $5,678. That is the starting point for the college to determine financial aid. It's not necessarily what the family would have to pay. Sometimes colleges do not have enough financial aid in order to give students enough to meet their full financial need, but that EFC will be the starting point from which the colleges will build their financial aid. And there's some eligibility criteria. They mention here that, oh, well, Larry might be eligible for a federal Pell Grant. He might be eligible for some direct loan eligibility. And also, he might be able to receive financial aid from his institution, as well as from the state of Vermont. And then they have the schools listed on the Fafsa. Now, can I take control for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? If we had been in a live system, whoop, right here there would have been a box for Larry to connect to the Vermont grant application. And it would actually bring him over to my VSAC where he could log in and he could file the Vermont grant application for the 2020-2021 school year. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out from this page a little bit, and we're going to go to the VSAC website, which is vsac.org, and you can see my VSAC on here. And so if a student has not created a My VSAC account yet, they can register now right here. But if they've created a My VSAC account already, they can log in, and then they can get in and they can file their Vermont grant application there. So hopefully we have helped you file your FAFSA tonight. If there were some questions that stumped our experts who are manning the comments, then we'll be following up with you in the near future. And also, if you were able to file your FAFSA tonight, I would love to tell you about our Fast FAFSA 50 contest. You can post on social media that you were able to file your FAFSA tonight. You will tag us, so at VSAC, and then you will do hashtag FAST FAFSA and the number 50, and one student will win a $50 gift card each Friday. We'll do that drawing Fridays at 4, and you can be entered into that competition as well. Thanks very much for joining us, and if you have more questions, please feel free to contact us at VSAC. We are definitely here to help in this process.